got one of the basic starter kits, you likely got a 500 watt halogen light or a screen exposure stand with a 500 watt halogen light attached to it. What we're going to show right now is how to set up this stand and then how to expose the screen using the 500 watt halogen light. Now halogen is a fairly bright and hot light, so it takes, using a dual cure emulsion that we sell in the kits, about 13 to 15 minutes to expose the screen. The 500 watt lights have a glass that protects the bulb. Now we recommend keeping in the glass even though it does say UV filter, but we do include with your instructions exposure guidelines for keeping the glass in and keeping the glass out. For demonstration purposes, we are going to keep the glass in. It protects the bulbs and keeps it from burning. So just open the glass lid and then pull out the bulb. It's pretty simple to insert the bulb. It comes with a wrapping around it. You do not want to touch the bulb with your fingertips, because if you get grease on it, it will explode once it's lit up, and you don't want that. So there's two contact points. You push on one contact point, and then the bulb sits snug in between, and you have your finished light. Fold this back down and screw it back in. The rest of the stand setup is pretty fast and simple. We simply put these two posts in the uprights. And then attach the head onto the two uprights. Now, if you don't have an exposure stand, it should sit about 16 to 18 inches above from the frame. So this one's about 17 or 18 inches, and if you need to, you can adjust it by bringing it up a little bit like that. Very basic exposure unit. I think it costs under $50. So to expose, you simply put the image or the frame onto the stand like so, so the image is directly underneath the light. Then we take our glass to hold the film down. Ensure the glass is clean. If it needs to be wiped off, wipe it off. We'll take the clean glass, put it over the image area to protect it from the heat of the light and to hold it down. Now if you notice this image area, this image is a spot color image. It's a fairly simple image. What we're doing by putting the glass over the image is we're creating a positive contact between the film, the glass, and the screen. That film needs to be pressed directly against the frame so that no light can work its way around the film in order to create a blurry image. If it's not pressed directly against the frame, then the image could shrink, you could not have straight or crystal lines, you would have blurry and dull lines, and your image wouldn't come out the way you want it to. Unfortunately, with this type of exposure unit, there's not a really good way to ensure that you press this glass directly very, very hard against the screen so that it sandwiches the film. If you press it too hard, it'll rip the screen, and there's really no way to put weight on top of it, other than just the weight of the glass. It helps a little bit, and it works for simple images like this. So spot color images like this, anything that doesn't have fine lines or small detail or gradients in it, halftones in it, it'll work. But anything with more detail, it won't put enough pressure on there in order for it to hold the film tight enough against the screen to not have good enough positive contact. So just to quickly reiterate, if you want the positive contact, you need to make sure you have a different type of exposure unit that uses foam to press against it or a vacuum lid. We'll show that next. But for this image, make sure it's centered. And then this is a 110 screen. We coded it 1 and 1 time, so we will be exposing the screen for 13 minutes. Once your screen is in place and your timer is set for 13 minutes, we'll simply plug it in and start the time. This is a manual plug unless you put it on a timer like a Christmas light timer, so you do have to make sure to come back and unplug it once it's done exposing. But right now the screen is exposing. Come back 13 minutes later, unplug it, and then we'll go to washout. Our screen is now done being exposed, so we'll unplug the unit, take the glass off. The glass will feel a little warm. And then take the film off. You should see your developed image in the screen already. It should look a lot lighter than the rest of the emulsion which has been exposed. The other thing to keep in mind that if you're using the sheet of glass that came with the exposure stand, it measures 12 by 16. So you will see a little shadowing for the edge of the glass that may wash out, especially if you put a lot of pressure during washout. To stop that from happening, you can get a larger sheet of glass that covers maybe a 16 by 18 inner area of the screen. Now the reason we don't include a larger sheet of glass with the screen is because it has the tendency to break in shipping. So we include a little bit smaller sheet of glass that is able to fit around most people's image area. So now we see the unexposed screen and the exposed screen, and we can tell the difference between the two. Now keep in mind, this area of the emulsion is not exposed yet. That's what our opaque transparency blocked out the light during exposure and allowed this screen to be left unexposed. That's why it's so important to have an opaque film to block out the light during exposure, and once your exposure is done, keep the screen in a light-safe environment until it is washed out. Now if you're washing out outside, what can happen is if you take the screen out to the sun or into a lit room, it starts exposing immediately the unexposed emulsion. So even though the emulsion will still look a different shade than the rest of the screen, you'll still be able to see your image. It exposes both at the same rate. So this will be exposing, but it'll still be lighter than this emulsion because this emulsion has been exposed for longer. You need to keep the screen in a light safe area until after you're done with washout. That's probably one of the biggest problems people have is they take their screen and their image that's supposed to be left unexposed out to the outside and try to wash it out. The sunlight has a lot of UV rays in it. You definitely want to avoid that. If you need to take it outside or through a lit area, what we recommend is getting a black contractor's grade 3mm trash bag and putting the screen in the trash bag in order to do so. This will keep plenty light safe until you need to wash it out. Storing screens in trash bags are also a great way to keep them light safe before you rinse them out and before you expose them. So what this means is that you can coat your screens with emulsion, put them in a trash bag, and keep them in a lit room for up to 4 to 6 weeks until they go bad. That way you can have screens ready to go and you don't have to worry about coating screens directly prior to exposing them.